Greetings from the My Broadband studios. My name is Aki Anastasiou, and it's a great pleasure to welcome our in-studio guests for another episode of What's Next. Nomvuyiso Batyi is the Chief Executive Officer of the newly established Association of Comms and Technology. A warm welcome to you. It's lovely to see you again.
Likewise, Aki, thank you for having us here as Association of Comms and Technology. Looking forward to this conversation.
I look forward to it too. And Naveed Kashif is the Vice President for the Southern Africa Market Unit for the Nokia mobile networks. It's great to have you with us. Just tell us a little bit about the Associations of Comms and Technology. It's pretty new. What do you guys exactly do?
We've been around now for just over 4 years. So what we do, we ensure that the six major telecoms network operators in South Africa, which is your Cell C, which is your MTN, Rain, Liquid Intelligent, Telkom, Vodacom, and MTN, speak with one voice when they talk to government. And we make sure we do this by doing research. So let's say there's an issue, a topic on satellite, will be the voice to say how should the licensing of satellite happen in South Africa on behalf of the sector. So we don't want differing views from our members, especially because we're saying this is about the ICT ecosystem in totality. It's not only about individual members.
Okay.
So that's what we do in the main.
And your favorite word is spectrum.
Yes, of course. We want more spectrum.
Naveed, and of course, Nokia has been around for decades. I mean, I'm busy working on a book at the moment and remembering my first Nokia device. But of course, that's when Nokia was a business that did devices and the communication infrastructure, which are two separate businesses now, and not related. They're kind of related because they're distant cousins. But we talk about Nokia, we talk about these massive towers, talk about 5G, we're talking about the connectivity that happens in the background, right?
That's correct. Look, first of all, thank you for your invitation. Happy to be here. Nokia is one of the largest player in telecom industry. We are massively present in Africa continent as well from last many years. And in terms of Nokia businesses, we have actually three prime businesses: Nokia Technologies, which is licensing our technology to the partners in this industry. Then we also have Nokia Mobile Networks. That's what you refer to as the massive towers. So That's our 4G, 5G, and all the other Gs which come before and after. That's the Nokia Mobile Network business. And then we have another massive business, what we call network infrastructure. That's where our IP routers, optical gear, which is connecting the world, and some of the other related portfolio is present. And lastly, we have cloud and network services, where we have all of our cloud application, mobile core, and some of the other services portfolio which is there. Yes.
You know, it's amazing when you think we are in year 2025, and it was 1994 that the first mobile networks went live in South Africa in the month of June, which is not that long ago. You know, it's literally a few decades ago, and yet there's been so much transformation that has happened. But today, in the world that we're living in, AI has got such a major presence in everything that we do. It's the energy that runs through every network that is really driving economies, transforming economies. And AI is really transforming the mobile network industry. And when you look at the networks globally, we're seeing massive changes in traffic. We're seeing massive changes in how the traffic is managed. But what makes its application in radio access networks, RAN, particularly that is important in Africa. So why would you say that's important in Africa? Where's the shift happened?
Right.
And can you explain what radio access networks are to people who are watching this for the first time?
Right. So let's start with RAN. RAN is radio access network technologies. This is where we have typically our radio units, or what we call radio modules, which are connected to the baseband unit, and then the rest of the network flows from there in terms of transmission and rest of the components.
Yes.
Now, these radio units, they are radiating radio signals on different level of spectrums: low band, mid band, high band, etc. And that's where you see your bandwidth, your throughput, your downlink, uplink, all of those details, and all the cell phones are connecting there. Now, coming to the AI, what you have referred, I think AI is essential, and I think even more important for Africa continent, because what is AI? Let's take a quick step back. AI is actually giving us advanced techniques, methodology, algorithms which can be applied to existing technologies to make them even better. Now, let's take an example of Africa, power. Now, power is expensive, is not always there in Africa continent. Of course, maturity levels are different from country to country. But if you have a AI component in RAN deployment, then AI can actually intelligently distribute power, switch off some of the sites if it is not in use, switch between different parts of the network in a much more intelligent way. So for me, AI in Africa will allow us to consume resources which are scarce in a much more efficient way.
Okay, so and it's all about optimization, right? You've got scarce resources you mentioned, and how is AI optimizing the network to deliver the best performance? And this is where you guys come in at ICASA, and from a technology provider's perspective, as well as from an industry body perspective, what are those key challenges in optimizing RAN infrastructure across Africa? I mean, we touched on a few of them, but what would you say from an industry perspective? What are your industry people telling you?
It's not what they're telling us, it's what we see as well.
Yes.
So in terms of actually ensuring that, especially I know, first let me start off by saying ICASA has made it easier for people to deploy RAN access networks. So it's been okay in that respect. However, if you're looking at and you're linking it to the AI technology, it's fine insofar as areas such as suburbia, like where we stay, Pretoria, Joburg, Cape Town, Durban.
Yes.
But it's not easily accessible in other areas. And why is that? It's the whole issue of we're having high levels of vandalism in South Africa of infrastructure generally. And as a result, when you see the application and the use of AI technology, you only see it in these areas that I have mentioned. So we are saying to government, we need to work together to find a solution that will actually ensure that where our members deploy and other people deploy networks are, they are safer, right? They are not subjected to the challenges that we're currently faced with within the South African environment.
Okay, so would you say that vandalism is the number one challenge?
It is.
And has it at least been curtailed a little bit, or has it got worse, or is it kind of stabilized?
It has gotten worse. Now it has even gone to fiber. Think about it, no one can do anything with fiber, it's glass. Right?
Yes, correct.
It has just people just destroying infrastructure for the sake of destroying infrastructure. So if you go to, let's say, rural areas, they'll even struggle to have basic 2G network services because of the level of vandalism that
Wow,
we're currently experiencing.
That is frightening. What are the challenges that you're seeing from the Nokia perspective?
Look, when we talk about Africa, I think the number one thing is the maturity of infrastructure, whether it is power supply or it is transmission to the sites, because still in Africa there is not enough fiber. I know what you're talking about in terms of fiber connectivity, but still there is massive microwave deployments here because there is not enough fiber in the ground. But as we go towards more advanced applications and the digitalization of even government institutions start to happen, you need much more robust infrastructure. And I think that's what will drive further penetration. And the last point which I would like to mention, of course, is the smartphone penetration. Still very low in South Africa. In South Africa and Africa in general is very, very low.
Couldn't agree with you more. And I think that I stand to be corrected, but we still haven't passed that 50% mark, or we're thereabout yet. And, compared to the global average, which is sitting at about 75%, when you take into account there's 1.4 billion people on the continent, that accounts for, 700 million of those people still don't have access to the internet. And you're quite right in what you're saying is that the fiber networks, but all of that's improving, and there's massive, investment being made into data centers, fiber. We served well with undersea cables, I believe. Tell me, is vandalism an issue in other African countries versus here in South Africa? Do they have the same kind of challenge with vandalism?
Look, when it comes to vandalism, South Africa always stands out.
Okay.
Of course, there are
because we've got a bigger network, and
yes.
yeah.
And of course, there are similar issues in other countries also. We have seen this in Nigeria, in some of the other African countries, but there are also African countries where we don't see similar issues.
Okay, so listen, it's fascinating stuff. But coming back to the radio access network, and we talk about AI, you've both touched on how important it is in optimizing this, because you got these challenges, right? So AI-driven RAN improves network efficiency. When you touched about that, so once you've got that efficiency running, it's really critical in optimizing the network, right?
Yes. So look, the way we see it, there is a AI RAN alliance where there is a lot of work which is happening. So once you have AI on your RAN portfolio, it is by definition optimizing the resources of your solution and giving you the best possible output. But then there are applications which can run on top of a RAN solution, where we can actively look into all the resources of the network and the energy consumption and take some decisions by means of our AI algorithms to optimize on the overall energy usage in the network.
You know, all of this that you're talking about ultimately is going to translate into reducing costs. And of course, costs are the most critical part of operating networks, as we know. Can you share some insights with us on how this impacts affordability and accessibility for users?
I hope that with this advanced solution, the improvement is seen at perhaps at two levels. One is the overall user experience will improve because you will be able to have better quality of service what you are consuming, video, music, whatever, or gaming. But in the same time, I believe that some of these optimizations, which will happen at the economic level, should translate into a better price bundles for the consumers too.
Give us some real world examples or pilot projects where AI and radio access networks have already delivered, measurable improvements in mobile networks. Have you been able to measure this?
You know, in Saudi Arabia, every year there is this annual pilgrimage where there is millions of people, yes, attend. So last year, Nokia was doing optimization of this network, and we decided that we will do it by means of our AI tools. Hundreds of decisions were taken in a couple of seconds time without any human intervention to provide the best possible user experience, the speed, the throughput to the consumers or the participants of Hajj. And this is one of our star projects, and we showcase this in Mobile World Congress also this year.
That is fascinating. So you're obviously seeing like a massive demand when people are on the pilgrimage wanting to use their devices. And of course, when there's no pilgrimage taking place, demand drops completely, right?
And we were making use of this AI tools to allocate more network resources to where the need was, so that that the people who are on the ground there, they can get the best possible experience, despite the fact that there were a lot of people on a short time.
Latency and reliability are really critical for 5G. And I mean, that is what differentiates 5G and of course, future networks. How does AI in a RAN environment enhance service quality for industries like fintech? There's healthcare, where you're hearing these mobile, healthcare solutions that are being implemented, and of course, education. How do you guys see it from your perspective at ICASA?
So where we've seen it, actually, it has been mostly in health, right? That because the Department of Health has been very instrumental in trying to find solutions, they have been very proactive to say, how do they use technology, especially artificial intelligence, to actually determine which hospitals should be piloted for purposes of NHI. And they are working with some of our members, and I'm not sure how it's going. But for me, just the fact that government was able to think in that manner, that which instead of saying we're going to go to Steve Biko, you'll find that maybe Steve Biko is not the best. It's another hospital within the Gauteng area that it might be piloted. But I know some of our members are doing that, so we've seen that in that area. So it's been encouraging how they have that they've started, that they have put their hand up to say we want to do this pilot.
Okay.
Yes.
That's fantastic. So, and obviously, when it comes to 5G networks, latency is really critical.
Correct.
Where does RAN play its role in this regard from your perspective at Nokia?
Right. Look, on your point, I think any mission critical application or network requires low latency. So our RAN solution, not only RAN but the full solution which go around, play, of course, a key role here. I personally believe that that network slicing can help in that regards, because you can create a slice which is for either health sector or for education or for any other mission critical application.
So it's like slicing is like a dedicated
Yes,
bandwidth
resource.
capacity
Exactly.
resource. Okay.
Exactly. And now if you complement this with AI, this can be even much more efficient, because the solution of slicing already exists for quite some time and you can
Yes.
do many things. But now can you imagine that there is AI component and which is monitoring actively the resource allocation which has happened to that slice. So for example,
Yes.
in the healthcare sector specifically, if some critical action is ongoing and you need more resources, AI can actually give more resource to that particular slice to ensure that this critical work which is happening is continuing without any disruption. And then also I see that that overall private wireless networks will become a very important trend in our industry. And I see digitalization of government sector or defense sector or public safety, all of them will be eventually shifting towards a private wireless network, because it is offering much more capacity, robust, resilience, etc.
Okay.
Well, listen, I mean, it's absolutely fascinating, but to get all of this right, there's always policy happening in the background and the regulatory stuff, which is where you excel at. And I remember you in when I worked with you many years ago. But Nomvuyiso, to getting the policy and the regulatory part of this is really critical. Now, the organization which you represent, the Association of Comms and Technology, you guys speak as one voice. What kind of role does policy and regulation play in accelerating the AI adoption in mobile networks? Because if you speak as one voice, you've got everybody else in agreement on what needs to be done. I imagine that it will help speed up the industry. And how do industry bodies actually support this transition that has to take place?
So for us, what we've been spearheading with government, we're saying we do recognize that legislation never keeps up with technology.
Mm-hmm.
Our legislation was last updated in 2020, in 2005, which is like 20 years ago. And we say technologies such as AI, it first allow it to happen, right?
Yes.
Don't rush to regulate, because it's all about people being there first and making the right choices at the right time, right? However, we're saying in order for people to invest in South Africa, the likes of Nokia, my members, that kind of thing, they would, at some point, they would need certainty, right, as to, so that they're not surprised if another person were to come and, let's say, exploit the technology that they have. How do you ensure that the investment that people are putting forward is protected from a policy point of view? So I say they need regulatory certainty. So if, let's say, you're going to assign a spectrum or a license to a person, that person has to at least be able to be given a period of time to enjoy that license in order for them to make a return on investment. If you think about the licensing of 4G, 5G spectrum just recently, South Africa made in excess of 14 billion rands. They were expecting to make 8 billion rands, right? And that is way in excess of what they were expecting to make government. And we're saying in order for people to realize the money that they've put there and for them to exploit technologies such as AI, give them that certainty that they have put in the investment beforehand, before you actually cause any disruptions. But your legislation needs to be updated. We did tell them, but not insofar as artificial intelligence.
Okay.
We have seen that they've come up with a framework on artificial intelligence. It's more about ethics and related stuff.
Yeah.
It's not the actual the do's and don'ts insofar as in investing in such technologies.
Okay.
So we're still saying, watching that space from a government point of view, but we're just saying, remember, in order for the technology to come, somebody, excuse me, has put money behind that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you represent, the Association of Comms and Technology in South Africa. Yet some of the networks, like, the likes of Vodacom and MTN, have got a presence in other African countries. So I imagine that the rules and policy and regulation differs in each of those countries, right? Are there similar associations in those countries as well that you collaborate with?
They are. So, for example, in Tanzania, they're trying to set up one. In Ghana, they have a very active one. that we've gone and met with them. And I know that even in Namibia, they were trying to set up a similar association, but which was only had one session
Okay.
with them. So each and every person, it's from working efficiently, because they realize that you just need this one person that will be your voice instead of having fragmented
Yeah,
voices
exactly.
and confusing the policymakers. So that's what they've been doing here in South Africa, in Africa and elsewhere. So it has actually been I think two areas that have been very successful in my mind that come to top of mind is Australia and India. That in India, for each and every step of the value chain, the association will say, like on something as small as RAN access network, they'll have a big committee to say, how should government deal with this from a provincial level, because they have provinces like us,
Yeah.
to a national level. And it's very effective how they're doing that. And they have changed how government works. They say, we will show you how policy needs to happen. Don't tell us you're not the sector expert. We
Yeah.
are. So that's how they're doing it. And also in Australia, it's in their law that before anything happens, the association has to do a sort of a socio-economic study to demonstrate to government whether what government wants to do is possible, which is quite unique. Remember, in
Yeah,
South Africa,
no,
it's
absolutely.
the other way around.
Yeah,
So it's
exactly.
those two countries that I'm actually quite impressed. Instead of just being like I see like in Ghana, it's more like a lobby group. Like
Yeah.
they're always making noise. It's not based on research. Then in these two countries, how they've positioned the association is quite unique in my mind.
That is so interesting. It is so interesting. So looking ahead and looking at the future, and it's difficult to predict the future because, if I had to say, give me a time frame of 5 years, the way technology is evolving, the way networks evolving, the investment that's been made into AI, it's so difficult to predict a decade away. But I'd like you both to try and, paint the picture for us into the future. What does the next 5 years, what does the next decade perhaps look like for AI-driven RAN in Africa? And how can operators, how can governments, for example, and tech providers, really, this is all about collaboration. How can they collaborate to really unlock the full potential of what we're talking about? What needs to happen? Where do you see it in the next 10 years, Naveed?
Right. Look, I fully agree with you that when you say collaboration, that's where the big things happen, and everybody need to come together to improve overall maturity of telecom infrastructure, industry, and digitalization in Africa continent. Now, coming to your question, I think if we look in future, let's look from the perspective how the network is going to be and how the consumption of network services is going to be. Because if you look at today and from the last years, we have built this network for consumption of internet and social media and videos. Now, as AI comes in, AI is not coming only in the network. AI is going to come in agriculture, is going to come in public safety, is going to come in defense, etc., etc. So there will be a lot of needs of connectivity of different kinds in our day-to-day environment. And I think we will start to build networks in that way as well. That will require, of course, policymakers to take some creative actions and decisions in a timely manner. And then from our side, we need to, of course, bring advanced, efficient solution at the price levels which are relevant for African market. If I take some of the new networks which are being built here, for example, Ethiopia was one of the last example where there was a second operator which came in, and Nokia was the company who was selected to build such network. So we are taking a lot of actions as company to stay relevant and also stay ahead of the game for the Africa continent
And
from a
it's so
technology
critical.
perspective.
Yeah, and it's so critical because, and this excites me so much about the continent, is that the potential. And, there's, I like to use the term, there's a tsunami of connectivity coming. Because, if you look at the continent, as I mentioned earlier, 700 million people that don't have connectivity, they're saying that within the next 3 years, 300 million people will have access to the internet for the first time. And add along that another 150 odd million connections that you mentioned in agriculture and IoT and all that sort of thing. This is where you've got this tsunami of connectivity coming. And we as a continent, we need to be ready to deal with it, because I don't think the world has seen that percentage increase in the amount of people that are going to be connected on these mobile networks. So this technology is really critical in enabling this and adding those efficiencies. And the challenges that you have as the Association of Comms and Technology is really playing a critical role, talking as one voice on what you need to have done to enable all of this.
So
Where do you see the next decade?
So the thing that I liked, you started with the network. I'll talk from an end user point of view, right? You finished it off when you're talking about the hundreds of millions of people that are going to be connected to the internet, right, moving into the future. But you have a particular context within South Africa and within Africa itself. I think you spoke about it before, the devices, right? Somebody has to have a device. You can have the best of networks, right? You will find that as we're sitting here, we have 2 or 3 devices that are connected to the internet, from the home to the office to our mobiles. But people within South Africa still cannot afford devices. And for the last 2 years, we have been asking a government, especially National Treasury, to actually give a break to the sector. So any component that he orders for 5G is taxed as luxury good, besides the VAT.
Yes.
I'm not even talking about VAT. So if you were to look at 2G, 3G handsets, they still have normal VAT, normal tax on it. So government doesn't make much money on it. And we are saying to them, in order to realize this digital economy that you're talking about, in order to ensure that more people are connected, in order to ensure that prices go down from a spectrum point of view, in order to make sure that prices go down from building of networks, the more people that get connected, the better. And remember, I don't represent OEMs, right?
Yes, you're independent.
Yes, so give a reprieve to South Africans, even if it's a year. Even if you say, just on 4G handset, we are not going to tax it as a luxury good for a period of a year, and see where that takes you as South Africa from an end user point of view. That's the first thing.
So just to clarify, a 4G handset is also seen as a luxury item.
Correct.
And it gets taxed accordingly.
Correct.
Okay.
Government said, which would have to put it in context. Government said, as of the 1st of May, right, the magical date, they are going to actually not tax handsets that are worth 2,500 or less. Think about it, how many handsets that you know of that
not too many.
Yes, that are going to qualify at that, right?
I should increase that.
Even the person that is assembling here in Midrand, his handsets that are 4G are quite more expensive.
Agreed.
And we're saying, in order for you to realize, in order for you to actually make sure that there's connectivity to grow the economy, for people to be connected, for people to be able to utilize AI, for people to have businesses, give them a break for a year.
You make a very good point, because that's going to unlock more adaptability, and people are going to start using and make it more affordable for people.
Correct.
So if you say for a year, bring the prices down, give everybody a reprieve, it will actually spur the industry forward. Listen, I want to thank you both for coming in, because, we take a lot of the stuff that we're talking about for granted as users. Now, I'm a user. You guys provide and help provide, and you facilitate the networks to talk to each other, but it's really a critical part of the economy, and it has to be done properly. And I think that it's been a fascinating discussion to understand what happens in the background. So big thank you to you, Nomvuyiso Batyi, the Chief Executive Officer of the Association of Comms and Technology. Thank you very much, and an amazing body that talks as one voice. And a big thank you to you, Naveed Kashif, the Vice President for Southern Africa Market Unit for Nokia Mobile Networks. You're based in Dubai. Thank you for coming through to join us here in Gauteng and discuss this very, very important topic that not only influences us here in South Africa, but it's across the continent, because connectivity doesn't have any borders. It transcends across the continent, and a prosperous continent will mean better lives for most Africans on the continent. So thank you very, very much for joining us.